Hey guys, we're diving into following your curiosity. Really excited for this episode. We sit down with Brian Donohue, who is a Emmy-winning veteran reporter from New Jersey, who's worked for the Star-Ledger, NJ.com, News 12, where he had the really popular Positively New Jersey segment and series. And he's covered the whole state from this human interest lens that's kind of made him an icon there. When we caught him, he was taking a little breather from the madness of the day-to-day news grind before starting his next adventure at Red Bank Green. And we got to ask him all kinds of stuff about story, how it starts, where you take that seed of inspiration and how you fearlessly go after it to turn it into something awesome. And I'll be real with you, this starts off fast and furious, but just stick with it because there are a lot of nuggets of inspiration and things that are just going to make you want to go out there and turn your ideas and dreams into reality. So super excited to share this with you. Roll the tape. We got Brian Donohue here. Welcome to Seaberry Talks. So excited to have you. Brian is a veteran reporter from New Jersey. You know, Latte actually credits you with being the guy who made him love his home state. Didn't know if you know that. But yeah.
Wow.
Which is like huge because there it is.
Cutting board.
You don't have one?
I did a story on the cutting board. I followed, in order to show how Amazon works, I ordered a cutting board and followed it through I was one of the first reporters who got into an Amazon warehouse. I'm not sure how I finagled it. It was all proprietary technology for a long time, those robots moving around. We have a lot of them here in New Jersey. And I said, well, let me to tell the story, let me try to follow one product.
Man.
So I put on my New Jersey, the first scene was me at my laptop in my New Jersey Devils jersey and Christmas shopping and ordering and pressing buy on the New Jersey shaped cutting board. And then the next scene was the guy in the Amazon warehouse with the order coming up, and I followed through the whole warehouse.
All the way through, so you could get this back.
And then it was delivered to my house. No. I think I gave it away to somebody else as a Christmas present that year.
That's awesome.
It was delivered to my house. But the last scene I think was me. No, I might have been serving cheese on it in the last scene. I can't remember,
That's
but
great.
But that was a good way to tell the story, right? Just to buy a particular item, make it Jersey-centric, wear the Jersey Devil jersey, and then buy a New Jersey
And there it is,
cutting
all
board.
of it. You're a veteran reporter who's covered the whole state of New Jersey through this human interest lens that literally makes you laugh, cry, and as Latte and I were talking about it, like, wonder how the heck you came up with this stuff.
Again and again and again and again.
Yeah, it's being away from it 3 months. I realized the again and again part for the past 6 years, 3 to 5 of these stories a week was really getting to be too much.
Okay.
So it's really been great to have a break and a hiatus and pull back and think about things. But yeah, I just always try to find a different way to tell the story. You know, to come at it sort of sideways. I described the segment I've been doing for the past 6 years, Positively New Jersey. I describe as a cross between CBS Sunday Morning and Wayne's World. That's kind of the best way I can describe it, because I do try to adhere to journalistic standards, but I do try to be the sort of, wow, dude, like, because that's me. I'm excited about this stuff, and you have to bring that, and I think it helps tell the story. And sometimes it's in front of the camera, sometimes it's behind the camera. The best stories are the ones where I don't have to get in front of the camera. You know, you can just be the sort of documentarian. You know, you guys know that those are the best stories. The less you have to do, sometimes you just have to get out of the way. But then there's sometimes where, you know, you have to jump in front of the camera and make it work.
Wait, how many years though altogether have you been doing this though?
So I did 6 years of video with Ledger Live, right, at the Star-Ledger. That was a webcast, and that was kind of like launching the pre-YouTube days. Like that was when Wine Library TV, Gary V, and there was this, before YouTube, there were all these video, like these vlogs Rocket Boom. Did anybody remember Rocket Boom? It was like a news.
Yeah.
And so we kind of modeled it after that. So there was that for 6 years at the Ledger. And then there was a big shift in video. And then they sent me back to writing for the last couple of years there. I was not doing video. And then I found my way into TV. And another 6 years here doing Positively New Jersey. So 6 and 6. The Ledger Live was 6 years, and this was 6 years. I like that. It's kind of a nice round number.
You said that you felt like you've been like covering some of the same stuff, but for me, like as a audience member, it always feels so different and so new. And like from the way you covered Hurricane Sandy with Splinters and Sand, where you can get really raw and deep because of your understanding of Jersey, to, you know, more recently you had the surfboard in the Meadowlands.
Mm-hmm.
That story was amazing. I remember being on an assignment with you one time, and I think about this assignment all the time, where you were just going on a deep dive into men, like male pampering, because they were making fun of, what was it, Cory Booker for getting pedicures?
Right. There was a U.S. Senate race in New Jersey, and it was Cory Booker versus Lonegan, Steve Lonegan, the Republican candidate. And Steve Lonegan made fun of Cory Booker because he liked to get pedicures. And his joke was, I like a nice scotch and cigar, like manly man. Like, oh, you know, like, oh, is this girly man with the pedicures? So this is, and Nadia, I credit you for nailing this as working the camera too. You made this story because, so what we did was, right, I decided let's do both. I've never had a pedicure before, and I hate cigars, but I'll go to a cigar lounge. And I smoked cigars. I used to. So we did both. And then, so we got the pedicure. That was good visually, right? You came with me there. You shot that. And then we go, and I hate anybody touching my feet. That was the thing with me. Like, I do come near my feet, I will just scream. But I was okay when I did with the pedicure. But so then we go to the cigar lounge, and amazingly, it's full of burly Newark and Essex County cops.
Like the manliest of men, like
all holding cigars, talking about their pedicures and how much they love pedicures. Yes. And I never forget the quote. It's like, hey, yo, you got to take care of your feet. He's like, you ever have it when your nails are all curled in and they're yellow and they're right there, this, and you got it? I'm just like, and there was one, you were shooting from across the room, and I was mic'd up talking to this guy, and he's telling me this, and you know at that moment when you're shooting a story like that, where you're getting that sound and somebody's saying something, and you're like, I just hope I hope it's all running. I hope we're getting this. I hope, because this is it. This is it. And you were, yeah, this is the moment, and you were across the room, and you nailed it. It was so good. And so much of this stuff is just going out, like I find is like just throwing yourself into the situation. Like you have to really believe in the magic, you know. I really have to believe that if you knock on the door, you walk into a place. And I have to say, like, I'm blessed to work in New Jersey doing this stuff too, because people just say, right? I don't know if everywhere in the country they're just going to start talking about their ingrained toenails, but like, you know, New Jersey is definitely a place where, you know, I lived in New England where you could be on a supermarket line and for an hour and you're not talking to anybody. But in New Jersey, you're going to know about the person's divorce going on behind you. You might be in an argument with the person in front of you. You might be best friends. Like it's everyone's just laying it out there. And that's so good for me. And I develop enough faith in my own skills and in just knowing that, you know, and some of it is just sheer hustle too.
There are going to be so many people like, wait, where am I? What just happened? They just got like this deep dive into Jersey. And to pull back, we're a design agency, and they're probably like, wait, where are we going? Now I know all this stuff about Jersey. But design and graphic design, video, any type of advertising and marketing, we do it all. And it's all storytelling. And so Lachi and I, and, you know, sharing the human experience with other people and with audiences and finding things that they can connect to. And Lachi and I were having this conversation about storytelling, and we thought about the most creative people that we know and people who are able to find those sparks in life and turn it into something. You were the first name that came up for both of us. It's just like, Right.
Oh,
I don't know
thanks.
that I've met anybody who can just capture all the weird, crazy, interesting, funny, intriguing things that are going on in the world and not just like see it, but then take it and be like, I'm going to do something with it and have the perseverance to turn it from an idea or something that you noticed into something that resonates with lots of people. And I mean, when we were talking about prepping this, we had this one question where we were like, what is it like for you? Are you just like a Slack board or like GChat where it's like boom, boom, of ideas? Like just like you're just walking around, there's like notification. Like, what happens when you're going through the web?
My wife will be home. My wife will be home shortly, and you could ask Deanna what it's like to live with, because she is the sounding board for some of these things, like in the kitchen. And sometimes she's just like, "No, don't do that. Don't do that." You know. So.
And how often don't you do that versus how often do you do that, despite, the advice or?
She encourages me to do it all. A lot of it is me just sending out the most absurd option and then whittling it down to the one that's actually, But a lot of it is just like follow basic curiosity, and it's just the adventure. You got to really love the adventure of doing it and the process,
It seems like, Matt, you just really focus on that story. I mean, the surfboard story is a really great example, I think, because it just seemed like you just kept on trying to find the story.
Oof. I had a weird rash, seriously, for like 2 weeks after. So, people who listen to this probably don't know those stories, right? So, shall I explain the story?
Yeah, tell us.
All right. So there's a train line through the New Jersey Meadowlands. I think people know the Meadowlands. It's this giant swampy region just outside New York City, and the train goes through this swamp on an elevated track and into the tunnel through New York City. So the Meadowlands, a giant stadium is there, and a lot of dumps. It's notorious for toxic wastes and everything else. It's swampy. It's humans have tried to tame it for 300 years and not really been able. It's right outside New York City. So anyway. As the train goes into New York City, I was on my way to my back doctor in New York City. I look out the window, and in a gully, like a creek, a sort of man-made dug thing along the trenches, along the side, outside the window is a surfboard in the water, floating in the water. And I'm like, I'm a surfer, so that catches my eye. And lesson number one is just, if you're on a train, look out the window. Don't be on your phone, right? You never know what you're going to see, especially when you're going through the Meadowlands. You could see dead bodies. You could see, there's so many things you could see. You never know. I'm always looking for the body. That's kind of why I saw the surfboard. Because if you do that trip enough, eventually you're going to see it. And so there's a surfboard. And then I tweeted it out. I said, there's a lot of commuters on Twitter. I said, has anybody seen the surfboard? And they said yes. And I think months went by. Six to maybe 10 months went by. I don't go into New York City that much. I took the train again, and I was glued to the window that time. And I was like, I'll go by, and it's there again. It's in the same spot, floating. So the tide goes in and out, like it's stagnant there. But how is it staying there? And what is it doing there? How did it get there? And I got obsessed with the Meadowlands surfboard, And so I decided to try to get there. And and this is the thing where it becomes a story about the Meadowlands as well as just the surfboard, because the Meadowlands is this area right in the middle of this huge metropolis that has parts that are just unreachable. Like so I got my cousin, my knuckleheaded cousin Jimmy, I introduced him as in the piece. And we decided to try to find it. I mapped out on GPS like where we could park the car, and we thought we had a creek to get in, and we had to bushwhack with machetes. And it was through horrible water that was probably pretty toxic and contaminated. But we did get a kayak through. It was a really hot day. We chose the absolute worst day of the year to do it. So this is the other thing that I try to do is like, when you sit down and tell this story, like you got to really hope it becomes about more than just a search for a surfboard. And we pull up to the surfboard, and there's a guy sitting there. And there's a chain link fence on the shoreline, and that's a trucking headquarters there that they wouldn't let me in. I tried to go into there through the front door, and they told me there was electrified fences. I could never get to the creek. I couldn't go through the property. That's why I had to do this whole path. So anyway, this guy, I think he was Tony from Hoboken. I mean, he had a classic New Jersey name like that, and he works at the trucking facility, and he put the surfboard there. He found it, fell off a truck or something. I forget how he got it, but he put it there and tied it to a rock so it would stay in place, because he's really interested that when he takes his breaks back there behind the trucking depot, he can see which way the tide is flowing based on how that surfboard is pointing. And then subsequently, this is where it gets crazy, the snapping turtles that he likes to watch, and they love cheese doodles, he says, the snapping turtles, they love cheese doodles. They will sit on the surfboard. So he left it there as a little spot for a surfboard. So this story, inevitably, my cousin Jimmy and I, we can't believe we not only found the surfboard, got the surfboard, but found the guy who put it there. And then it became, you always try to pull back when you're doing a story or writing a story. Like, what does this say? What is the story really about? And what that story became about was like this guy's search for solace. Like, he's looking for a little solitude in his work day. And he goes behind the shed in the trucking yard, and he sits there and feeds snapping turtles cheese doodles on a surfboard that he went through all this work to tie up there. And it just became like a beautiful story in the end, and a story with a universal theme. It's like, man, we all just want to find like a little bit of peace in our day, right? So that was a fun story. That was a wild one.
There was something you had mentioned too when you were talking about crafting stories and how you shoot it and it's about one thing, and then you take a step back and you think about like, what is this really about? And something I always, when I talk about storytelling, Lati and I in previous podcasts, we're talking about whether or not everybody's a storyteller. Somebody's like, oh, everybody's a storyteller, everybody's a communicator. And I said that I think storytellers actually take it upon themselves to play an active role in deciding what you're communicating to your audience and saying, no, this is what the story is. Because some people are like, oh, I just want everybody to speak for themselves, and then doesn't really end up saying anything. And all of your pieces, whether they're funny and light or deep and heartening, they have these poetic moments to it where you took that step back. And it's not that first thing that you thought it was when you went to film it, but you take that step back, you let it absorb, and you're like, what is this about humanity or about relationships or love that I can actually relate to audiences that's bigger and deeper than that first thing that I thought it was. And I think that for me is a really big role in storytelling. And when it's done well, someone takes it upon themselves, like, no, I'm going to help shape the message that somebody else should get.
Yeah, I wish it hadn't taken me so long to figure that out in my career to do that. But you're right that no matter what kind of storytelling you're in, whether it's your marketing or design or anything, it's finding, what is the Meadowlands Surfboard story about, right? It's about that I always try to have one, when I've been doing these Positive in New Jersey segments, I try to have, usually it's one line in the script, because you don't have a lot of time. It's a 3-minute TV piece, and it's usually one line, and it's usually during the writing process where I try to sit back and say, what is this about? And you take it from the little thing that you're telling the story about to the thing that the people sitting home on the couch are going to say, oh, this is about me and my neighbor. This is going to be about, this story about Brian getting to know this person that he, didn't know or never understood is also about me getting to know my neighbor. This is about me needing some peace in my life. This is about my struggles with my family. This is about, all these universal themes. And it took me a while to do that. And you mentioned Hurricane Sandy, and I think that was sort of a turning point. We were working together during that time period. And I was told to do a half an hour documentary about Sandy. And we came up with, we kind of put something together, like a rough idea. We brought it to our editor at that point, and he sat me down. I had been doing a lot of first person stuff up to that point. And he said, I want to see this storm through your eyes. And I was like, my eyes? I'm like, my house is intact. I mean, I don't have power, but there's people around me. Like, people don't, who cares about me? Like, I really had that journalist reporter, like, this is not about me. I'm not getting involved. He was smart enough to push me to say, like, no, you have the perspective because you know this place. And that's when what we did was I just visited all these places along the shore that had meant something to me emotionally growing up. And that was just a template it wasn't about my emotions. That was just the roadmap, right? Here's the house that my family rented as kids. And here's my sister's little bungalow that was her little dream, lifelong dream to own. And the neighbors next door who became a big part of the story, who are a working class family that lived there. And that just became the roadmap. But that was a big moment for me to sort of, I think, be a little more vulnerable myself in my storytelling. And, I mean, even during COVID, I did a piece about, the opening shot was me on my front porch in my bathrobe saying, it was the day that I finally lost it. I was like, and I think that was another thing. I think a lot of people related. It was like, yeah, there's a TV reporter in a bathrobe on his front porch on my TV. I was like, yeah, we're all freaking losing it here. That was but that Sandy coverage was a big point where I think I could put into the writing. I became a little more confident, comfortable. And part of it is maybe getting older and having more experiences. Because I don't think I could have done that at 25 or 30. I don't think it would have worked right in the writing. I don't think I just don't think I don't know. Maybe I could have, or maybe I just wasn't ready. But I think I've allowed a certain vulnerability in my own work, and I think that works a lot to talk about like big themes like love and forgiveness. Like I've done serious. A lot of it is not just Meadowlands and the Surfboard. I've done a lot of serious emotional stuff and interviews, and I don't make any qualms about saying, putting a very line about love or faith or hope or some of the big themes in life in there.
That's so great. Are there projects that end up getting abandoned on the cutting room floor? Because every single one you were describing, it's kind of like was that Olympic gymnast Strug who stuck the landing one-footed? Do you have those moments, or do you always stick the landing?
This is why I'm glad to be taking a break, because working for local TV news, there's just no option to not turn it over, right? I was hired to do 3 a week. I was doing 4 for a while, and then the new news director came in and said, "We love your stuff so much, we need 5. I need you on TV 5 nights a week." So there's no that became too much. That pressure became too much, and the quality started to dive. And then this is the beginning of the end of me at my last news outlet. But yeah, that pressure is local TV news and the turnover. I mean, I'm not a fan of that medium for that reason. But there's nothing like TV news, which is just like, what do you got? What do you got for 6 o'clock? What do you got? What do you got?
We run into it though with like client work a lot, because the clients ask for something, and sometimes what you're able to capture doesn't exactly fit, or you end up with a lot of the same things that you dealt with in journalism, where you're like, I went out, or this thing didn't pan out, and I still got to make this thing happen. What are some of the things that you learned through all those years of having to meet the deadline that help you turn a creative idea into a finished product, even if that creative idea isn't going the way you wanted it to?
Yeah, I mean, there was so many times over the past 6 years where, just because of the medium, where you're cranking out a product that you just say, man, if I just had another day on it, man, if I just, and sleeping on it is such a huge part of the process too. Like sometimes setting it aside and clearing your brain and going for a walk or going for a run and doing that stuff. Like that's where the good ideas come from. That's where the breakthroughs come from. That's where that line, so that to be on a daily deadline, it's excruciating because you have that feeling so many times. But there is a rush in being on deadline. There is a power to it when you are under that kind of pressure about how amazing that the stuff can come out and how it does sometimes push the best stuff out. It's a little bit of both. Sometimes being on deadline will make you do amazing work, and sometimes it'll hurt the work. and I'm hoping to do more like longer. That's one of the goals going forward, is to do half an hour. I got a lot of ideas that'll be 20 minutes,
Awesome.
half an hour show
Wow.
ideas. Stuff that'll be able to flesh things out a little bit more, work at a little more reasonable pace.
Great.
The 200th audience, I mentioned this, the 250th anniversary of America is coming up, and there's a lot of revolutionary war content in demand.
Yeah, man.
So I am getting my tricorn hat ready.
You gonna make some fake money with paper and tea?
That would be nice.
Have you seen the 250th anniversary logo that they came up with? There's
No.
a graphic design firm that came up with it. It's gorgeous.
Really?
It's
I gotta check that out.
really pretty. You can, if you look up 250th anniversary, maybe graphic design. I found the article just the other day. If I find it, I'll send it over to you. But it very
Is
very
it
pretty.
traditional or is it like
No,
where
it's
250 years would have taken
super
you?
modern. It's actually like, and think of like a ribbon dancer. Imagine them being able to somehow make a 250, and it's really cool. And what's really neat is they were actually really trying to, recognizing that the country is in a challenging moment right now. They balance the red, blue, and white, and so they kind of intertwine as they flip back and forth to create this really visual 250. It's a really pretty.
That's a great logo. It would suck if we don't make it to 250.
Yes.
Wait,
Oh no, the Republic has fallen, and we had this great logo.
But our
We
coins,
only got
our
the
250
we
coins
got
are worth
the-
a lot.
We got the 248. Damn it! We had the logo all set.
that is what would happen to whoever that designer is, who's made the most
Yeah,
amazing
imagine that.
logo. Oh, of course.
And all I got is this damn T-shirt.
Just something like, how many times do you send off like the most amazing publication or a project? And you're like, when are you gonna make it live? Just make it live so I can tell
Oh, man.
everybody. And then whoever made that logo, it'll just never see the light. of
And
day.
and now I see, like, this is where, like, you start envisioning like how to make this a movie, right? The last scene is that person with the logo on the T-shirt just walking through the rubble of like buildings that have come down, like the movie, the Cormac McCarthy, The Road, like that kind of scene, but with
exactly.
that T-shirt on. Yeah.
For some reason, you have a wolf as a companion. It makes no sense, but that's the reality.
There is an element of storytelling that I feel like we just like went through a practice of
We
it.
did,
I was
yeah.
telling, I don't know who was talking about this, but there's an element of it that, especially when I'm script writing, where I'm literally just going through a movie scene and like, here's all this information I have from this interview. What would they say in a perfect way? How can I cut this down to tell that story? There's a whole bunch of like, what would happen if they said this, or would they say it this way, or do I have that? Did I capture it? And then going back and seeing, if the stuff lines up, or looking at my best quotes and figuring out how they weave together. But I'm literally imagining it in my head playing out to figure out the story. There's like an element of that. And then there's also wondering if a story is good playing out. We did that with Being George. It's like, what if it's this American Idol type thing, and then you find out that that's actually the thing.
Yeah. So it's wild, like with that kind of storytelling. Is sometimes like if you have interviews and you want the interviews to fall in with the story that you have in mind. But then I've worked in the opposite direction where I'll just write a script and I just put the sound bites down and the quotes are on a page, and then I build that story around what the
That's
people
what I
have
usually do.
said.
But then I'm like thinking in my head when I see all of the best quotes together to figure out how those pieces connect.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, well, how would they connect in natural like dialogue, or how would someone get from this idea that they gave me up here to this idea? And usually that helps me find that middle quote that they said. That's like, oh, well, they would probably, did they talk about how they did? And they're like, that's how the story kind of like all comes together.
But don't you love that point at which like all that stuff on the page, like it starts to come together and there's like, oh, it did it again, I love that moment. I really do love that moment.
When you were saying that you were going partially away from journalism, honestly, I was thinking, well, no matter what Brian goes into, they better watch out because it's going to work. Because of the way that, because of the way that you just go after things, and you just bring this professional, I don't know, Brian Donohue approach. I don't know how else to describe it. that it's just going to work out, and it's really fun to see what's going to happen with that. So no questions there. It's just a statement that
Thanks, man. Thanks.
Well, actually brought up fearless and perseverance a lot too. When we were talking, we'd spend a lot. I don't know if your ears were like itching. We spent a lot of time talking about you before talking with you. And she was talking about how fearless a lot of your stories are. And then I was talking with a mutual coworker that we used to have, Nair, and we were talking about how nowadays, I guess because of maybe Instagram or phones and everybody only texting and nobody calls each other anymore or something, but a lot of the storytellers she's dealing with in terms of teaching don't want to like take that leap and that risk of like, sometimes you just got to knock on a random person's door and be like, hey, want to talk to me? And like that's becoming harder and harder and harder.
Yeah.
To be able to just put yourself out there.
But what you just described, the door knock, is my absolute 100% favorite part of journalism, right? So like, back in my print days when I did investigative stuff, it was like hard news reporting, prisons and criminal justice and politics and immigration. And I don't know where I'm going with this, but it was always my favorite thing. And then I one of the things I'm glad I got into video and TV is you have to be out in the field. So much of print reporting now is people just emailing, and there's less of that in journalism now, that face-to-face. And for video, you got to do it. You have to get in the car and you have to drive, and because you need the video. And I love, man, you just described the door knock to me is like I love it. I can think of, I'm having this rush of all these crazy knock on the door episodes.
Can you break down a door knock? Just give us one episode, like one example or another of an actual door knock and how it panned out, because that is, what you're describing is kind of inside baseball stuff for anybody that's not a journalist, because, a lot of people will hear that and they're like, well, I've done that as a salesperson. It's uncomfortable. I've done that as a such and such. And so what is that experience for you?
I mean, it all depends on the story you're doing, right? If you're knocking on the door of somebody who's been accused of a crime, it's very different than if you're trying to go door to door and ask people about the state bird. Do you like the there's goldfinches in your yard. What do you think of that? This is the stuff like, I always tell like journalism students, I'm like, don't major in journalism because they're not going to teach you the stuff you need to know. Like there's a body language to it, right? You ring the doorbell. I used to love print because you just had a notepad and a pen and you could I'd put it in your back pocket. So you don't, and then you take a few steps back and you take a very, so I'm sure sales people do the same thing, and you just introduce yourself, and then, then slowly, as they start talking, then the notepad comes out and it's like, but I just love that because you never know, like, it's like, you're opening this magic door, like you get slammed in your face. You might lose, nothing might come of it, or you might be invited in and get this amazing story. The craziest door knock ever, Adia, was with Andy Mills. I don't know. Were you at the Ledger when this happened?
I don't know.
It was pre-video. There was a guy named Herbert Axelrod. He was a really wealthy guy from New Jersey who made his millions in writing books about how to care for pets, how to care for your guppies, how to take care of your hamster, so he became a millionaire, rich, and then he donated what had been considered the largest collection of Stradivarius violins to the New Jersey Symphony Orchestra. The Ledger did a special section on these violins at one point about this was going to transform the orchestra into a world class. And then these little cracks in the Herbert Axelrod facade started showing up. Like he got indicted on tax evasion. And it's like, and then people were starting to say, what about this Stradivarius might not be there was questions about the violins. So he disappears. He flees the U.S. And then we got a tip from the U.S. Attorney's Office that they think he's in Cuba. So Andy Mills and I called down to them because I had spent time in Cuba in the late 90s. And I said, there's only one place that Americans have boats. He's got a fishing boat. It's the Marina Hemingway in Havana. So I called the Marina Hemingway and the guy the head of the marina says, "Oh yeah, he's here. He's just out fishing." I'm like, "Oh my God," So we fly to Cuba and we go down there and we give a door knock to this guy who's running from the law, from the feds, and he went to slam the door in my face. I've never done this. I put my hand up and held the door open. I was like, we came all the way from Cuba, man. We came all the way from the States. We snuck in. We had no journalism visa. Like, we could have been thrown out of the country. It was, so anyway. But we were able to get him. He invited us in for mango juice. And he told us the whole story about why he's running from the law. He's too old. He doesn't want to go to prison. And that was just, I don't know how we pulled that one off.
Why?
But he shouldn't have spoken to us because he wound up being caught.
That's the rush. Oh my gosh.
I know.
Lassie had a really good question. He was wondering how you deal with boredom. Do you get bored?
No, I haven't been bored. I can't remember. I don't even know what it feels like.
Yeah, I was even wondering if you allow yourself to get bored. Was another question.
No, that's been a challenge. Like the same kind of like brain frenzy that helps me make these connections between, the storytelling, like connecting these dots and being able to tell these stories is also really is not great for your mental health. Because you can make mental connections and sort of like start layering in terms of your own anxieties too. Like, and I recognize that too, as I was like, oh, this thing that helps me in my job is I need to learn how to calm this down for when I'm not working. Meditation, surfing, there's a lot of serious recreation. Meditations, for me, it's meditation, surfing, running, hiking, fishing, reading, but to try to calm the brain down, man, it runs hot.
So somebody comes up to you, Brian, and they say, I want to be a storyteller. What do they need to know? What do they need to do? What's that nugget that you give them when someone says, I want to be a storyteller? Like, where do I go, or how do I make it happen, or how do I be a good one? What do you...
When I speak to students and I get that question, I tell them, you got to write. You got to work. None of it works unless you have the raw skill. Mm-hmm. That starts with writing. Even when you get into video, like I would feel like if I didn't have enough footage or I didn't have the right sound bites, I could write myself out of any problem. And that all comes back to years of just write, like daily newspaper drill. And the other thing is just really, really follow your own curiosity, right? Like it's all about curiosity. Like I all the time students asking me when I speak to students, like, how do you find your story ideas? And I'm like, you just, you got a bowling alley down the street from you. Like there's 50 stories in the bowling alley. Who's the youngest bowler? Who's the oldest bowler? I mean, why are the bowling shoes so ugly? How did that happen? They don't just pick something and just ask yourself as many questions as you can about it and work. I heard a debate recently on a podcast, like whether curiosity was a inherent trait or a learned skill. I'm not sure which one it is. I think I was blessed with it by my parents somehow. And, I'm not sure, but so it's the work and the craft of writing and being really curious.
Maybe it's an inherent
and put the damn phone down. Put the damn phone down. That's my advice for everybody.
What was the last thing?
Put the
damn phone down. Just generally good advice.
Thank you so much for spending time with us. This is like the best break from my workday. Though it's technically still work,
it was fun.
I guess, but this is amazing. I could go for
Brian,
hours and hours.
Yeah,
this was fun.
This is an absolute pleasure to talk with you, man. It's been way too long, and
miss you guys.
We're really excited for you and where you're going, and where you've been. Quite frankly, man, 6 years, and next 6 years, it's just really exciting to see what you've been up to. And, honestly, man, your energy is it's addictive. It's just so fun. You help to push my curiosity and my my efforts to persevere. So I really appreciate you and everything that you're bringing to the professional stage. It's awesome.
So good to see you.
You too.
Great to see you, man.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Take
Brian.
care.